Hello Army, and welcome back to Taekook fans. Purple Heart. Do you still remember that unforgettable FIFA World Cup final moment in July? The moment BTS stepped onto one of the biggest stages in the world and delivered a performance that made armies everywhere incredibly proud? But here's the part most people never saw. Before BTS could create that spectacular moment, they had to push through an unbelievably demanding schedule. Imagine this. You have just finished a major concert in Paris. Your body is exhausted. Your voice needs rest. Your feet are hurting. You desperately need sleep. But instead of returning to your hotel for a full night's recovery, you have to pack your things, leave the venue, head to the airport, and fly across the Atlantic. That was the reality BTS faced. After completing their Paris concert on July 18th, the members were scheduled to leave Europe around midnight. And because of the time difference, they were expected to arrive in the United States at around 2:30 in the morning. But their day wasn't over. Not even close. After arriving, they still had to get to the hotel, deal with their luggage, and prepare to head back to the stadium. Their call time was already set for 7:45 a.m. Think about that for a moment. They could arrive in the middle of the night and, only a few hours later, already be back at work. There was almost no time to recover. The members themselves knew exactly how tight the schedule was. During their conversation, they even talked about the possibility of sleeping on the plane, because once they arrived, they simply wouldn't have enough time for proper rest. And yet, they couldn't slow down. This wasn't just another rehearsal. They had to check the stadium. They had to complete their in-ear checks. They needed to understand the stage layout. They had to practice their choreography. They had to memorize their positions. And they had to coordinate every movement with the cameras. Because this wasn't an ordinary concert. This was the FIFA World Cup final. A global event watched by millions of people. Every movement mattered. Every formation mattered. Every camera angle mattered. And that is where the behind-the-scenes footage becomes incredibly interesting. When we watch BTS perform on television, everything looks effortless. The choreography looks natural. The formations look perfectly synchronized. The members move around the stage as if everything has been planned instinctively. But behind those few minutes of performance were countless repetitions, corrections, and tiny adjustments. The performance director carefully walked them through every entrance and exit. They discussed where each member should stand. They practiced moving forward. They practiced moving backward. They practiced forming straight lines. They practiced how to come together without crashing into one another. And they even had to figure out their positions when there were no clear marks on the stage. Instead of simply staring at the floor, the members were told to watch the person in front of them and adjust accordingly. And one detail that immediately stands out is Jungkook's center position. The team needed to make sure the center position was accurate. But there was another problem. During the actual performance, the camera might not always be perfectly aligned with the physical center of the stage. So the members couldn't simply depend on the markings. They had to watch each other. They had to follow the center. They had to understand the spacing. And they had to make adjustments naturally. This is where BTS's teamwork becomes so important. Because one person's movement affects everyone else. And Taehyung's position in the front formation also required careful coordination. There were moments when Taehyung and another member had to establish the front position first, while the other members entered and aligned themselves with them. On screen, it might look incredibly simple, but backstage, every detail was being examined. Too far forward? Do it again. Too much distance? Adjust it. Timing doesn't match? Run it again. The members repeatedly practiced the same section until the movement became almost automatic. Even the famous boom chuck section had to be synchronized perfectly. Everyone needed to perform the movement together. Not one member early. Not one member late. All together. These tiny details are exactly what make a massive performance look effortless. But despite the pressure, exhaustion, and strict rehearsal, BTS still found time to be BTS. They joked with each other. They teased one another. They talked about food. They used face masks. They talked about Europe and how much they enjoyed their time there. They even expressed how much they wanted to return to Europe again. Jin also brought some humor into the conversation by talking about the flight duration to New York. The other members quickly corrected him when his calculation wasn't quite accurate. It was a small moment, but it showed how the members could still laugh together despite being exhausted. Then, the mood changed again. It was time to focus. The performance director explained exactly how the cameras would work. The members needed to understand when the camera would cut away, when it would return, when they should hold a pose, and when they should begin moving again. Even a whistle became an important cue. Once the whistle sounded, the members knew that one section was ending and the next camera shot was about to begin. They had to hold the pose, wait, then transition smoothly. And when the camera returned to them, they weren't supposed to look stiff or overly rehearsed. They were encouraged to relax, interact naturally, move together, have fun, because a great performance isn't only about perfect choreography. It's also about emotion. It's about chemistry. It's about energy. And most importantly, it's about making the audience feel something. The audience only sees the final result. We see the lights. We see the stage. We see the choreography. We see Jungkook in the center. We see Taehyung in formation. We see all 7 members moving together. But we don't see everything that happened before the cameras turned on. We don't see the exhaustion after the Paris concerts. We don't see the limited sleep on the plane. We don't see the early morning arrival. We don't see the rush to the stadium. We don't see the in-ear checks. We don't see the repeated rehearsals. We don't see the moments when they had to stop and correct their positions. And that's exactly why this behind-the-scenes footage feels so meaningful. Because it reminds us that spectacular performances don't simply happen. They are built. They are built through preparation, through discipline, through teamwork, through repetition, and through the willingness to keep going even when you're exhausted. From the BTS members, to the dancers, to the performance directors, to the camera operators, to the stage crew, everyone had a role. And BTS still had to give everything they had. From Paris to the airport, onto the plane, through the long journey, arriving in the early morning, straight to the stadium, rehearsal, in-ear checks, camera blocking, formation practice, and finally, the moment arrived. The lights came on. The music started. Jungkook took his position. Taehyung moved into formation. The other members followed. And suddenly, the exhaustion disappeared. For those few unforgettable minutes, they weren't 7 exhausted artists who had just traveled across continents. They were BTS, standing together on one of the biggest stages in football. And for ARMY, that is what makes this moment even more special. Because now we know what happened before the performance. We know the sacrifice. We know the preparation. We know the pressure. And we understand just how much work went into those few unforgettable minutes. From Paris to the World Cup stage, with almost no time to rest, BTS didn't simply show up. They worked for every second of that performance. And perhaps that's the part ARMY should remember most. The spectacular performance we saw on screen was only the final chapter. The real story began hours earlier, on a plane, in the early morning, inside a rehearsal space, where BTS and their entire team continued working until every movement was ready. So if you still remember BTS's FIFA World Cup moment, tell us in comments. BTS made history. Purple Heart. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Taekook Fans, and turn on notifications for more Taehyung, Jungkook, and BTS behind-the-scenes moments. Because sometimes, the most incredible part of a performance isn't what happens when the camera is on. It's everything BTS does before the camera starts rolling. Purple Heart.